Denver could be hours away from its biggest political shakeup in a generation. Mayor Hancock is running like he has a real chance of being sent packing by Jamie Gillis. Denver has not voted a mayor out of office since 1983. Analysis and insight from the numbers we have so far. And both candidates open up about what they'll do if they lose. It's not your imagination. Hail damage on cars is harder to fix these days, and there's one big reason why. Colorado is going to deal with that big boulder on the highway just like your husband does with house projects. What would happen if we don't fix it? Welcome to a special election night edition of Next. Stop and consider this extraordinary moment in Denver's history. You have a powerful mayor expected to cruise to a third term with all of the city's wealthy and powerful behind him. And who does he run into but a relatively unknown challenger with little elected, no elected experience? That, though, is the state of the city, the tension between the growth and the desire to preserve what matters to longtime residents, the restlessness, the decision to take a chance or to double down, to triple down, actually, on a third term for the mayor who presided over those boom times. We are in the Exto Event Center. This is where Mayor Michael Hancock will wait for the results tonight with his supporters. We are in the Rhino neighborhood, the neighborhood that was built and shaped in part by Jamie Gillis, the mayor's challenger. Ballots have been pouring in on this final day, but you know that's just the way that Denver does. In the last runoff, more than 50% of the people who voted did it in the last 2 days. At last check, turnout was at 34%. That was 20 minutes ago. If you're still holding on to your ballot, you have until 7 o'clock to get it to one of the drop boxes scattered around the city. Those locations are on the next Facebook page. So we're at that 34% turnout and counting at this point. Typically, your runoff turnout exceeds your first round turnout, but this has been such a nasty and negative race. I would not be surprised if we end up with less than the 46% turnout that we saw in the first round of voting. Our politics guy, Marshall Zellinger, is at Ophelia's in the Ballpark neighborhood, and that is where the challenger, Jamie Gillis, will be with her supporters tonight. And Marshall, these campaigns have looked at the numbers just in the way that we have looked at the numbers, trying to figure out how many people need to come out for Gillis to pull off the upset.
Yeah, Kyle, you've heard that number that 60% of the people who voted on May 7th didn't vote for Mayor Hancock, so he's in trouble. Well, 75% of the people didn't vote for Jamie Gillis. So how does the math work out for either candidate?
1 month ago, Michael Hancock received 69,000 votes. Jamie Gillis came in second with 44,000. If this is their base, and those same voters turned in ballots for tonight, Hancock is ahead 25,000. That means we need to look at the people who voted for neither. 65,000 people in May cast votes not for Hancock and not for Gillis. If these people vote today, Gillis will need to catch up with 25,000, and then it's a race for the remaining 40,000.
Put this another way, Kyle, of the remaining votes out there, if Hancock gets all his votes and Gillis gets all her votes, she needs 7 out of 10 who didn't vote for either of them, and Hancock would just need 3 out of every 10, and he would get yet another term. You know, I made this earlier this week, this tell me why thing. This is what's important today. The mayor, vote for one. People are still seeing this. There's plenty of ballots still out there that can be returned in the next 55, 56 minutes. Fill in one of these bubbles. Don't sit this one out, Kyle.
And Marshall, because of the fact that there's no public polling out there now, we know that the Hancock campaign has polled this race. So we have to look at their demeanors and their actions to tell us how close they think the race is. And it looks like they think the race could be very close.
I mean, you've seen the mayor out there in many events over the last week, and you saw the political ads. He went back to the one with his daughter, the positive ad that I think his campaign thought helped him ahead of the May 7th race.
All right, Marshall Zellinger, thank you so much. We'll be talking throughout the night. So we're also watching a couple of key city council races. You've got 3 incumbents who are in runoffs tonight, and we're also watching Initiative 302. If Initiative 302 passes, it would be a lot more difficult for there to ever be a Denver Olympic Games because it would force another vote by the people of the city on whether or not they want to spend any taxpayer money on this. You'll recall there's this big groundswell from powerful interests in town wanting to bring the Olympics in. Mayor Hancock was behind it, Governor Hickenlooper was behind it, the former governor, and then things kind of petered out, and Salt Lake City is actually going to pursue America's 2030 bid anyway. One key topic of debate in this Denver mayor's race has been the city's current policy of pushing people who are homeless off the sidewalks with sweeps and keeping them moving basically to the edge of town with the urban camping ban. So what we've seen is that people who were previously homeless in Denver are now homeless on cities on the outskirts. And today, 2 cities outside Denver conducted sweeps. So down in Inglewood, there are people who are camped along the South Platte River, basically between like Yale and Hamden. They got 2 weeks notice that they needed to move out. Today, the city moved in to clean up what was left behind. In Aurora, the city conducted sweeps at I-70 and Airport Boulevard. And you hear the same rationale from those cities that you do from Denver, that these homeless encampments are a public safety and a health risk. Colorado's Breckenridge Brewery, an old classic, has been owned by one of the biggest names in beer for the last 4 years, Anheuser-Busch. But now Breckenridge is at risk of losing its presence in the city where things started. On Friday, the brewery filed a lawsuit against its landlord on the original Breckenridge Brewery in Breckenridge. The lawsuit accuses Breckenridge Brewery Real Estate Company of breaching a contract that would have allowed the brewery to rent that space for another 5 years. The lease at the location on Main Street ends at the end of the month. They are still up and running and brewing in Breck. They're also brewing at their big new facility in Littleton, and with their new corporate overlords, they're brewing some of their beer up at the big Anheuser-Busch facility in Fort Collins. You ever have a project around the house and it just becomes so big, it becomes so daunting that you're thinking to yourself, what if we just didn't do this after all? So that is where the state of Colorado and CDOT and Governor Jared Polis have ended up on their big house project, which is moving the house-sized boulder that fell on Highway 145 near Telluride recently. There were 2 big boulders that came down and smashed that highway near Rico. They moved one of them out of the way, but after staring at this other 8.5 million pound boulder, today the governor announced, you know what, after all, we're just going to leave it where it sits and we are going to build the road around it. He says it'll save taxpayers $200,000.
We'll be proposing the name Memorial Rock since it landed around Memorial Day weekend, and we expect that for generations to come, people will have the opportunity to observe this geological masterpiece that we are calling Memorial Rock.
Hey kids, look at that big rock. I'm thinking there may be a slim to no chance that people are going to drive to see a big rock that's in the middle of the Rockies. But anyway, listen, if it saves taxpayers money, as the governor suggests, I don't understand why Republicans at the state capitol are trolling him over this. Either you're interested in innovative ways to save people money or you're not. So the road will go around the rock. Hey, speaking of the trips that we take around our state, I've seen a lot of cars lately sporting that Colorado tattoo of hail damage after our recent hailstorms. Perhaps you picked up the phone, called the insurance company, and they've told you good luck getting that fixed anytime soon. There's a reason why hail repairs take longer now than they used to, and our Steve Steger found out.
We've heard from a lot of folks lately who have cars dinged up by hail and say the body shops are all backed up. Seems inevitable with each storm.
The time of the repair is longer. That's why we see these backups at the auto body shops.
Carol Walker with the Rocky Mountain Insurance Information Association says there's a reason those repairs take longer. It's because your car is so smart now.
That technology takes longer to repair.
Think about it. Cars have sensors all over nowadays, windshield to the bumper. What used to take a day or two now takes several. And body shops get backed up because more of us are driving those newer cars.
You have a glut of new cars with new technology out in the path of the hail.
You can also blame our newer, smarter vehicles for driving up insurance rates.
All that cool technology that we have in the cars, the sensors in the windshields, in the bumpers. What used to be a couple $100 repair is a couple $1,000 or more repair.
All right, so I got to ask you, Steve Steger, hanging out at the palatial next studio, if it's really difficult to get somebody to fix your hail damage fast, why are there these people bouncing around saying, oh, let me fix it, I'll fix it right now for you?
You know, it's funny. Carol Walker says you should actually beware of those people because she says the reputable hail businesses, they have a ton of work already. And the people who are out asking for your business, if you want to use them, she says make sure you check all their reviews first and make sure that people haven't had bad instances with these folks in the past. By the way, this chair is really comfortable.
Yeah, no, it is. We had it shipped in. It was imported from overseas. It's the highest quality. If you want to take things for a little bit here, the helm of the next command, I'm going to go check out to see if we have an open bar or a cash bar, and also investigate the hors d'oeuvre situation. And I'll be back with more on tonight's big races in just a little bit.
Sounds good. Bring me a plate.
All right.
As we prepare to mark 75 years since D-Day on the beaches of Normandy.
It gives me chills to think of what they did.
One man in Lakewood is sharing a piece of history that's rarely been seen. A lot of people like to use the trails in Cheeseman Park, but many of them are doing it wrong. The city hopes these old signs will encourage new habits. And we celebrate a milestone made by a young woman we met after one of the darkest moments in her life. A story of hope. Next.
Hi there, I'm Kathy Sabin. Welcome back. Another typical spring day in Colorado, although today the thunderstorms not severe, at least in the metro area, where our high was just exactly where we expected to be this time of year. The storms coming off the foothills have brief downpours associated with them, a little bit of wind and lightning, but haven't had any reports of hail along the I-25 corridor. A different story on the far eastern plains, and concerns for flooding on some of the burn scar areas in southern Colorado, with the flash flood watch out near Walsenburg for tomorrow. As a matter of fact, with the low beginning to move over southern Colorado, slow moving storms tomorrow could bring a better chance of rain than severe weather. So these showers tonight are moving out, only to return tomorrow, and again, rain will be the biggest threat on Wednesday afternoon. Tonight, 52 with partly cloudy skies. Storms heading out in the next hour. 76 with a mix of clouds and sun tomorrow. Rain during the afternoon, ending in the evening. We do see thunderstorms in the Thursday forecast, a drier Friday, and a beautiful start to the weekend, Steve. Saturday's high 82 degrees with a thunderstorm back in on Sunday afternoon.
All right, Kathy, thank you. Denver Parks and Recreation is still trying to get people to take the path less traveled. A year ago, we told you about these signs on the east side of Cheeseman Park. The city says people were walking and running off of the designated trails, creating what are called social paths there. City also fenced off an area on the east side of the park. Today, Denver Parks and Rec said those efforts worked. The department now has its sights on the west side of the park. Check out these social paths created by runners, walkers, and animals. This spring, Parks and Rec plopped these signs in the middle of where those paths start and where they end. They didn't seem to be keeping many people off the paths today.
I just saw somebody run through there.
So in the past, people have taken a different approach to social paths. You know, we showed you UNC's campus in Greeley. The former facilities manager went on the library roof to see where people were actually walking on the grass and then paved paths in those spots.
I think building sidewalks just because people walk there is not a good thing, because that just kind of gives people the impression they can do what they want and they'll be accommodated.
Denver Parks and Rec says it's unlikely that it's a possibility for Cheeseman Park. Those designated paths lead people to safe crosswalks, which is where you want people crossing the street. The social paths do not. On Next, we have met a lot of interesting people. People have fun stories to share. People have emotional stories to share. And people who have their stories may be able to help others who may be feeling similar, like Sophia DiGirolamo.
I think a lot of people don't understand that just because you're a little kid does not mean that you're immune to mental health problems.
So Sophia wrote us a letter saying she is on the autism spectrum and was bullied a lot in elementary school. So she spoke to Next in September about being bullied and how it almost led her to take her own life when she was 11 years old. She got help. This month she's celebrating her graduation with honors from her homeschooling enrichment program. Rare pieces of history map out the Normandy invasion.
Essentially a map to hell, or a road to hell that they were going into, and they went and did it.
A man in Lakewood is sharing what his brother-in-law saw 75 years ago. And candidates don't like to talk about losing, but both of Denver's mayoral candidates know it could happen. They tell Kyle what's next.
A next viewer in Lakewood is giving us a look at some rare maps of Omaha Beach. With this Thursday marking 75 years since D-Day, Gary Warner felt it was his duty to share those images with you.
My brother-in-law, Bud Stephan, was at Omaha Beach on D-Day. He would want it to be passed along of what happened at Omaha Beach on D-Day. It gives you chills to stand there and look at the maps and to understand the men that hit those beaches. It's an incredible piece of history. You only really understand it when you see the map where these guys were headed for, and essentially a map to hell, or a road to hell that they were going into, and they went and did it. I understand that there was only 440 of these maps made, and they were issued to the people that were going on Omaha Beach ahead of everyone else. My brother-in-law archived it and put it in his sea chest, or trunk if you will, and carried it with him throughout the rest of the war and brought it back to his home in New York City. I'm proud of him and proud that he took me under his wing and made me a brother-in-law. Thanks to God for those guys that were a godsend.
9 News will air a special about D-Day on Thursday night at 9:30 on Channel 20. Kyle will be back after this. A little more than 30 minutes left for Denver voters to return their ballots before the results start pouring in. Mayor Hancock hopes for one more term. Jamie Gillis is looking for her first shot at leading the city. Let's get back to Kyle at Mayor Hancock's watch party at the Expo Events Center tonight. Kyle, both of these candidates know either one of them could lose, and they talked about it to you.
Yeah, losing is one thing that candidates really do not like to talk about during a race. They're kind of superstitious. Sometimes you'll even hear the longest of long shots say, well, of course we're going to win this race. But think about this situation. Mayor Hancock has been an elected official in Denver since 2003. For 16 years, this is what he's known in his life. And for Jamie Gillis, she's a city planner. Would she stay and be an urban planner in a city where she's made an enemy of the powerful mayor and his allies? I asked them both. Have you stopped to think about a life outside of public office?
Yeah, I think you can't. You got to allow yourself to do that at some point because you have a family, and at some point, I turned 50 in July. You want to think about when you and how you move on with the rest of your life. But right now, I'm passionate about the service. I'm passionate about the city and the things that we're doing, and I think there'll be an appropriate time for that. And there's some things that absolutely I want to do and ultimately do down the road.
If you don't win, can you keep working as an urban planner in a city run by Mayor Hancock and his allies?
Well, I will certainly try. I've certainly never been afraid to battle with the administration before. I won't be afraid to battle it going forward. And this is what I do. This is what I love. It's my passion. And I believe that if Michael Hancock continues as the next mayor, we still have a lot of work to do that I don't feel will get addressed by the administration. And so I'll keep working with the community to find ways to tackle those challenges.
Denver voters, if you are still sitting on a ballot, you got 35 minutes to get it to a drop box location. Those locations are on the next Facebook page. The first release of numbers from Denver elections comes at 7 o'clock tonight, and then they will begin to count that enormous surge that came in yesterday and today. Stay with the 9 News app and our social media channels throughout the night for more coverage, and I'll see you next time.